Mr. Provenza, you've mentioned several times today in your testimony the importance of transparency. Can you explain why that's important?
I think the committee has talked about that several times, that it wants to see a strategy for how money's being spent and understand how it's being spent and have reporting back from institutions that it's being used for the purposes desired, and so in order to give assurances to Congress and American taxpayers that it's being used for the appropriate purposes, we want greater transparency and accountability.
Is it fair to say that when hundreds of billions of dollars of the taxpayers' money is being spent, the taxpayers have a right to know how?
Yes.
Mr. Kohn, how much has the balance sheet of the Federal Reserve increased since September 1?
It's increased from around $800 billion to about $2 trillion.
And what was that money spent on?
That money was lent. It was lent to banks, investment banks. It was spent on lending through the commercial paper market, and it was lent to foreign central banks that lent dollars to their banks to take pressure off the U.S. dollar market. So it wasn't spent; it was lent.
Which institutions received it, and how much for each institution?
I don't know which specific institutions received it, but by categories of institutions, that's captured in our balance sheet that we publish each week.
But we would like that in writing, Mr. Kohn, for the hearing record.
Okay. I'm sorry, what in writing, Mr. Chairman?
The answer that you didn't have right off the top of your head to that question.
Okay. But I think I would... you're going to hold a hearing on this, Mr. Chairman, and I think I would be very, very hesitant to give the names of individual institutions. In fact, I think it would be a very bad idea because I think it would undermine the utility of the facilities that we're giving. But I think we should say more about the categories of institutions.
Mr. Kohn, you just said that $1.2 trillion has been lent or spent, as the case may be. That's $4,000 for every man, woman, and child in this country. Don't Americans have the right to know how you spent that money?
Yes, they have every right to know the purposes for which we spend it, the types of spending, the types of lending that's going on, how the types of collateral we're taking, and what we expect to accomplish with that.
All right. Well, specifically, I'd like to know how much was given to Credit Suisse and what you got in return. How much was given to Citibank, what you got in return. If you put out $50 billion to Credit Suisse, the taxpayers need to know that.
I'd be very concerned, Congressman, that if we published the individual names of who was borrowing from us, no one would borrow from us. The purpose of our borrowing is not to support individual institutions, but to support the credit markets.
Has that ever happened? Have people ever said, we will not take your $100 billion because people will find out about it?
We said we will not publish the names of the borrowers, so we'll have no test of that.
Well, what gave you the authority to say that? Isn't that something that we should be deciding, not you?
I think you gave us the responsibility in the Federal Reserve Act to oversee the stability of the financial system through our lending facilities, to be the lender of last resort, and we are trying to execute that to the best of our abilities.
And you're saying that that entitles you to keep secret the expenditure of $1.2 trillion, $4,000 for every man, woman, and child in this country?
I don't think we're keeping it secret. I think we're releasing a lot of information about it, but I would personally, I would personally be very, very reluctant to release the individual names of the borrowers.
What do you think might happen if people knew how their $1.2 trillion had been spent? Do you think they might be angry?
No, I don't know, obviously. I think that they can judge how the money is spent from how the money is lent from what we're telling them and whether it's having an effect, and I think it's having a positive effect in a number of markets. We've seen the commercial paper market, interbank market, et cetera. So I think it's been effective, but we need to do more.
Mr. Kohn, we're talking about secret payments of $1.2 trillion. I think you need to rethink your approach here. By the way, were these assets marked to market?
Some of them were loans.
Why not mark these assets to market and let people know the current value of this $1.2 trillion that you've spent?
The ones that have market values are marked to market.
So how much of them don't have market values? How much of them are worthless?
None are worthless.
Then why don't you mark them to market?
Well, we are marking the ones to market that have market values.
All right, my time is up. Thank you.
As I said earlier, just for people to understand, this goes under, the authority for this, I understand it came from a statute passed during the Depression. It was fairly dormant, at least as we knew it for a while. We were told September. Mr. Bernanke summoned a meeting of the Congressional Leadership Committee as well, and announced to us with Mr. Paulson in September that they were going to advance $80 billion to AIG. I said, somewhat surprised to the chairman of the Federal Reserve, do you have $80 billion? He said, I have $800 billion. He obviously was lowballing what he had, maybe made some money in the future. That was in September. I don't think the program had been active before. Clearly, a lot's happened. And as I announced earlier, I spoke to the chairman last week. We have a hearing that we are setting. Mr. Bernanke will be up here, and we will be having a hearing specifically on this program. And I say that the questions the gentleman raised, these are now questions we will be considering. And I think at an appropriate time, we'll be looking at that statute. I think this is probably not the time with turmoil in the markets to be amending it. But the subject the gentleman raised will be the subject of an entire hearing in February. Gentlemen of Connecticut, this panel on the